Hey, it is Any Old Gamer, and today we're going to be talking about reapps. Now, a lot of you guys who watch the channel regularly, you'll have seen that I do a lot of reapp streams, but I've never actually done a reapp video. So today we're going to be talking about a lot of the concepts that I talk about on those streams, but I'm going to try and make it a little bit shorter and more organized. So we're going to be on two people's accounts today doing reapps. The first account that we're on is Ice Piggy. Now, first of all, shout out to Ice Piggy. We'll do another shout out when we move to our second account, but thank you very much for allowing me to use your reapps and to use your account for this video. So whenever I do reapps, the first thing I do is actually load the JSON file into the optimizer. Now, if you're not familiar with a JSON file, that is actually just like the file that has information about your runes and grinds. I am going to put an info card on screen so that you guys can learn how to get your JSON files, how to install the optimizer if you're not familiar with it. But this is what the optimizer looks like. So we've got Ice Piggy's JSON loaded in here. And what we're going to do is actually come over here to the runes tab. We are going to say that we only want to reapp legendary runes. We're not looking at the ancient runes right now. Now, first rule of reapping is if you are free to play, if you're working with a limited number of reapps, you really want to try to focus only on violent and maybe will runes. Now, if you buy reapps or, if you're not completely free to play, if you get some additional reapps, then you may consider going out to Swift. If you're at an earlier stage of the game and you're trying to build your first BGR5 team, it is okay to reapp some rage runes in order to get that BGR5 team. But once you've gotten BGR5 and your PvE team set up, I would always limit my reapps to Violent Will and Swift. Now the next thing is, when you reapp a rune, you have to decide exactly what you're going for. So most of us are usually shortest, we're most in need of the slot 6 runes, and to a lesser extent we need slot 4, crit rate, crit damage, and HP, and then slot 2, usually speed. But those runes are all a little bit more difficult to reapp. The reason for that is because on any given rune you have a certain number of substats that you can roll. So for example, a slot 1 rune cannot roll with flat attack, flat defense, or defense percent, but a slot 5 rune can roll with all of those things. So the more possible substats that you can reapp, the more exponentially difficult it is to get that amazing reapp that you're looking for. So slots 1 and 3, they give you the best chance to get a good rune, but they're also the runes that you need least. Slots 4 and 6, you could wind up using a lot of reapps before you get one good rune, but that rune may help your account more. So you really want to decide which route you're going to take, and then it also, of course, depends on how many reapps you have. If you have a lot, then you may want to be able to do a mixture of all of them. So the next thing is, when you have an innate stat, that innate stat also cannot roll in your subproperties, which means that you've got an even better chance to get that amazing reapp you're looking for. So when we reapp, what we want to really look for is legend runes that have an innate stat. And if you put not none right here in the optimizer, it shows you everything with an innate. We also want to make sure that those runes are at least 6 stars. And then we don't really ever want to reapp anything that has speed, defense, HP percent, or attack percent. So we've got our optimizer loaded up now, and as we scroll down, we're going to see that we have 40 runes that match the requirements that I've just set. But not all of these runes need to be reapped. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually just sort by speed. And I'm going to look for all of the runes that are so fast that I know I'm not going to want to reapp them because, they're just already really valuable. So we see the Ritesh Will 5 right here. This is actually a really good rune. It's already 94% efficiency. We can gem this defense into defense percent, and then we can grind that, and this is going to be a really awesome rune. So we're not going to re-app this one. Next up, we've got this Nikki, Violent 5 right here. It's 23 speed. It's quad grinded. All of the grinds are actually low, which means there's more possible efficiency, so we're not going to re-app this one either. For each of these runes that I'm not going to reapp, I hit this little lock button right here. And that allows me to basically come up here, go into my lock state, and sort for unlocked to come up with my list. Okay, so now that I have locked all of the runes that have really good speed, the next thing I'm going to do is just check for which runes are just so crazy efficient and synergized that they can't really be improved, or at least that it would be really difficult to improve them. So to do that, I'm going to sort by efficiency. Right off the bat, we see this Ciara slot 1. It's got 30 accuracy, it's got speed, attack, HP, it's 113%. we're not really going to try and improve this rune. Yes, it only has 12 speed because the speed is gemmed in, but the overall rune is amazing. So we're going to go ahead and lock that. We're going to look at this Fang rune right here. This is a slot 1. Again, we have the accuracy innate. It's got 20 speed. It's got crit rate, crit damage, and attack. This rune is amazing. We're not going to improve upon this rune, so we're going to go ahead and lock it. So we're going to keep going down the list until we get to a point where we're just seeing runes that we might consider as reapp targets. As we come down a little bit further, we see like this Violent 1 rune right here. Yes, it does have HP, attack, and resist. The resistance can be gemmed over 4 speed. But the overall rune, it may be a reapp target. We're not deciding right now that it's a reapp target. We're just saying that this one's kind of on the line. So now we've locked everything that we know for sure we're not reapping. And then we're going to go ahead and actually resort back by lowest efficiency. And we're going to begin to reapp. Now, the key here is, it's very important to remember that you don't have to make one rune amazing. You want to make as many runes as you can better, and whenever that amazing roll is going to come out, it'll come out on the rune that you're working on. So the idea is to keep reapping the worst rune that you have until that is no longer the worst rune, and then you just move on to the next rune. And you'll slowly make all of these runes better over time, but you don't want to get fixated to the point where you dump 50 reapps into one rune and have not improved anything else. You want to make sure your overall rune quality is improving. So we're going to start off with this Vile 4 crit damage right here. It's got 15 resistance, it has no speed, it has no crit rate or attack. It's just a mess, and this is going to be our first target. So we do have a total of 38 reapps right now. We're a little short on mana. I'm worried we're going to run out. 135 million may not be enough. But no, we do have 38 reapps, so I will show you guys whatever good reapps come up. Okay, so right here you can see that we've improved the rune, but this is definitely not a keeper. We are going to continue, but I try never to put but I do also recommend never trying to put more than 5 reapps into a rune at a time. If it's just not going to give you something good, then it's time to move on to the next. Okay, we have got our first keeper. Now, it is unfortunate that the attack is a low roll and there's no speed. Most likely we'll need to gem in speed over defense, but guys, this is a 20 crit rate, slot 4 crit damage that's also going to be triple grindable. This rune is an absolute monster. We are definitely very happy with this. So now that we've got our first keeper, we are going to jump back over to the optimizer. We're going to locate the rune that we were just working on, which is this one right here, and we're going to update the stats in the optimizer. So we have 20 crit rate on it. Now the HP was a max roll. And what I always like to do, it's kind of unrealistic to assume that you're going to max grind with legends. Ultimately, that's our goal, but it's really hard to do. So I like to assume that we're just going to max grind everything with heroes. And if you wind up with a low grind, then you just keep re-grinding until you hit that max. So we're going to say this would be 15 HP. The defense is probably going to wind up getting gemmed out for speed. So if we figure like a hero gem, we might get 7 speed, and then you max grind it, that's 11 total speed. And then the attack, unfortunately, it's a low roll, but it will turn into 12% attack. So we double click on save current to see our efficiency right here. That's going to be a 99% efficiency rune. Not the most efficient rune in the world, partly because of that low roll on the attack and some kind of low rolls on the crit as well. But it's an extremely usable rune. This 20 crit rate on a slot 4 crit damage is amazing. Okay, so now that we've done our first rune right here, we are actually going to go ahead and lock this rune. We're going to come back up here, we're going to go to the lock state, we're going to go to the unlock state, and we're going to find our next target. Okay, so we're working on our next target now. It's a will slot 3, and you can see the original rune actually is really nice with this 28% HP. It is quad grindable, but the problem is it's just going to be a little bit slow, and it's just an amazing reapp target. So we are going to see if we can get something a little bit better out of this rune. Okay, so the finished product of the rune looks like this. Now I will say the 4 crit rate here is not ideal, but I do think this sets up much more as a support rune, so I would be very comfortable gemming this crit rate out into defense percent, and this is then a really, really nice support rune. It also could work for a bruiser who's on a slot 4 crit rate. You're going to be overall super efficient, you've got good speed, and you've got all of the stats synergized. partly because the resistance innate right here is going to synergize much more with support runes. It's kind of a wasted stat on a nuker. Okay, so we've got our next target. It's this Bio Slot 6 HP percent. And the actual rune right now, I mean, it's really nice to have that 20% attack roll, but we don't have any crit rate, so the crit damage doesn't synergize super well. You'd rather have higher defense on your HP runes, and obviously you want to have as much speed as you can get for a slot 6 Bio HP. So this becomes a really nice target with that. And it becomes a really nice rune with that, as well as I'm even just describing the rune. I will definitely take the 16 speed. I do wish this crit damage was something else, but I can live with that. At this point, I would just regem the defense into higher defense, and it's now a much more efficient rune. It's honestly not super amazingly synergized, but just the fact that it'll be 20 speed on a slot 6 HP does tend to make it pretty awesome. Okay, next up, we're going to look at, but not reapp, this slot 5 Bio rune. I just want to point this one out for a moment. So, slot 5 tends to be the hardest slot to reapp. I usually advise against reapping it unless you have a lot of reapps and you run out of targets. The reason it's the hardest to reapp is because it can get every stat except for flat HP. However, it's also one of the only runes that can be quad grinded. Now, when we look at this rune right here, we see that it has no speed and it has no crit rate, so it kind of lacks synergy. But if we change this crit damage into a speed gem, we are quad grindable with reasonably high rolls. I mean, basically all mid rolls, but it's just going to be crazy efficient. It's not going to be something that you can use on every monster because it's going to be slow and it lacks the crit rate, but when you find those monsters that just crave efficiency, and some monsters just crave tons and tons of efficiency, Vigor is a great example, you do want to have a few of these quad grindable runes just to pile in stats and kind of balance out those. If you think about the rune we rolled earlier, that 20 crit rate slot 4 crit damage that did not have the crazy efficiency. It was a really nice rune, but it wasn't a crazy efficient rune. This type of rune mixed with that type of rune just makes for a really good rune set. So we're going to leave this rune alone and we're going to find our next target. Okay, so next up we've got this Bio 4 crit rate. Now I'm going to be doing a video very soon, guys, talking about the value of crit rate runes along with accuracy and resistance. I was actually going to do that video before this one. It just, the way it worked out, this one's probably going to post first, but keep an eye out for that rune. I will tell you though, crit rates have become some of my absolute favorite runes. They are so versatile. I've talked about it a lot on stream as well. And this rune right here, the 17 resistance, 14 accuracy, it doesn't synergize greatly. It's not taking advantage of the fact that this rune can just have so many stats on it. So we've already gotten a slight improvement right here. Now this is not going to be a keeper. And there we go, guys. This is really nice. This can work really well for a lot of monsters. So basically, you're going to gem out. You can choose to gem out either the crit damage or the flat attack. I would gem out the flat attack, though. I'd leave the crit damage on since it's a crit rate rune. We changed this flat attack into HP. This is going to be a really, really nicely efficient rune. So we have 1 roll into the speed, obviously. We have 3 rolls into the attack, and they're all really high rolls. Crit damage is also max. This is like crazy efficient, and then you can use this, for example, on a Vertihile. This is an amazing rune for a Diana, especially once you gem in the HP right here. It's actually a very usable rune for Vigor. A lot of people forget that Vigor scales off of attack as well as HP, so this is a really nice rune, guys. So we are going to update the optimizer. We're going to move on to the next rune. Okay, so we now have run out of reapp targets that I want to use for the number of reapps we have left. So Ice Piggy is a free-to-play player, which means he gets a very limited number of reapps, and I don't want to get into a situation where I'm chasing to try and make an already good rune better. I would rather he saves these reapps for the runes that drop in the future when we get some better targets. So most of the runes that we have left are runes that I think are already usable, and if I were to reapp them, I could easily dump in as many as, the 16 reapps that we have left, just trying to make a crazy rune. The one thing I will do, because we do have 16 reapps left, I'll take a look and see if we have any Swift that might be really, really viable reapp targets. So we change this up over to Swift, we come down here, and we can see this Swift Speed one, the Swift Speed rune, Swift Speed 2, this is actually a really good target. Swift Slot 2s are extremely easy to reapp because we're not speed chasing. The rune itself is pretty bad. But it could definitely be pretty amazing. So this rune right here, we are going to go ahead and just try and make it somewhat more synergized. This should be a very, very useful rune for a lot of different sets that you can build out. So there you go, guys. Now for me, this is where I stop. Now I know these are all really low rolls. We're missing 6 attack, we're missing a crit rate, and then we unfortunately have a roll into the resistance, which is just disappointing. But when we think about our swift monsters, most of the time we're playing turn 1 with them. I mean, we're basically either you're using them for attack bar boosters or you're using them for like a Daphnis Mina turn 1 type. And to have 26 attack with crit rate and crit damage incredibly well synergized, we gem this resistance out. You can either put in HP percent, get a little bit of beef, or you can put in accuracy. Either way, this is an incredibly well synergized rune. So it may not have the amazing stats that you would hope for it being a slot 2 legend, you know, with innate. But it's a super, super useful rune, and there's no reason to dump more reapps into this rune when we can use it as it is and try to improve another rune either now or down the road. This slot 1 Swift right here with the crit damage innate is going to be our next best bet, so we might go ahead and do this one. But I do want to be careful that I don't get into the habit of speed chasing with a limited number of reapps left. So we're going to take the first thing that really just looks synergized to us and hope that it has speed, but not necessarily require that it has speed. And the only reason we're really doing this is because the resistance just doesn't synergize and hey, okay. This'll work, guys. This is a quad roll. Obviously, it's unfortunate that it lacks speed, but the good news is it's a quad roll attack and we have a flat HP that we can gem into speed. Ultimately, this is going to be a triple grindable rune, so even though it's swift and it won't be amazingly fast, it will be amazing for a Mina or a Daphnis or your other swift damage dealers. And this is what the finished product looks like. Now, there is still a little bit more room to grow. The speed was a hero gem that went 7, which is good off a hero gem. The grind only went 3. The attack and the HP were both legends. We got 7 and 8, so there's definitely a little bit more room to grow, but overall this rune is pretty sick, guys. Okay, and we have now reached a point where I don't see any more targets that I really would want to use the remaining reapps that we have. I don't want to expand on Ice Picky's account. I don't want to expand beyond Violent, Swift, and Will. I'd rather save those last few reapps for when the next good target drops. Okay guys, so we are here on account number 2, Special Scrub 96. Now Special Scrub has been playing for a long time, but he hasn't necessarily been a daily grinding rune farmer. So we've got a ton of reapps, but we don't have a ton of rune targets yet. However, he is working towards his first BJR5 team. You guys know I always say that is the single most important thing you can do in the game. So earlier in the video, I said specifically you usually don't want to reapp slot 5s and you usually don't want to reapp rage unless you have a specific need. In this case, we do have a really good slot 5 rage target, and we are trying to get to that BJR5, so this becomes one that's actually worth doing. So you can see we've got the 16 resistance, crit damage, speed, defense. Like none of these are stats that we want on our rage runes, but this is a legend with a really useful innate. Not useful for BJR5 specifically, but just useful in general. We've got tons and tons of reapps and not a lot of targets, so that makes this one worth doing. And are we going to start out? Well, we actually did start out with something that's going to be much better for BJR5 already. Not necessarily our completed product here, but definitely an upgrade. Okay guys, so we have not helped him build his BJR5 team with this reapp, but we have helped him build something. Obviously, we do have to take this. This is a beautiful rune right here. We've got 1 into the crit damage, a triple roll into the speed. This attack can be gemmed out for crit rate, and it's just a sick rage rune. So we are going to take this. This was actually our only really good rage target, so we are going to jump back over now to Violent and Will. If we've only got a few targets that I really feel like will benefit his account at this point. If we are able to get those runes to pop early, maybe we'll take a look at some runes that do not have innates. Alright, so next up we've got this Will slot 4. It's got 15 crit rate, which is really nice for a crit damage rune, but it's basically empty everywhere else. And remember, when you're building your BJR5, you do need some HP and defense to go along with the damage. So this does become kind of a decent target, especially because our bales don't actually need that much crit rate through subs. And there you go, guys. That's a one and done. We're going to trade 1 crit rate for defense, attack, and speed. Definitely a one and done. We're going to move on to the next rune. This violent rune right here stood out to me. It is 65% efficiency, and even though we don't have innate, this should be really, really easy to make better. It has no useful substats at all right now, and there you go. That's already better. Not amazing, but definitely better. So we're only going to put 2 or 3 reapps into each of these runes. We're just going to see if we can get something really useful out of it. That's pretty good, actually. We get 10 speed and 17 crit damage. We don't really have anything in the way of tanky subs, but we can gem out the accuracy over here for some crit rate, and then we can grind that flat defense. Obviously, it would be better if we didn't have a roll into the flat defense, but because we don't have innate, and I think this is a really nice upgrade overall, we're probably just going to leave this one how it is and move on to the next rune. Okay, we do have another slot 6 attack. Now this one actually could help us build that BJR5. You can see the 22 accuracy, 11 resistance. There's really not a lot of synergy here. The 7 crit damage is nice, but overall there's just not a lot on this rune that works well for a slot 6 attack. And if this were a slot 6 HP, we might have really enjoyed that quad resistance roll that we just got right there, but I think we're going to have to let this one go. And we're going to see if we can get some crit rate and some speed maybe, or there you go. Crit rate, crit damage, defense. We grind in the speed. This right here is actually we don't grind it, excuse me, I meant to say gem, but we don't. This is your BJR5 rune right here, so bro, when you watch this video, gem some HP percentage over the flat defense, and this rune is built for your bail. It is beautiful. Alright, next up we've got this Rage 3 rune. The speed and crit damage are actually nice. Obviously you can't get attack on a slot 3, but this 26 resistance is basically all wasted on a Rage build. This is a rune that's going to be relatively easy to improve, even with no innate. There you go. That will actually work. Generally speaking, you need a lot of accuracy, kind of more on your Swift and your Despair sets, but there are a few Rage monsters that can really benefit from a high accuracy roll. And overall right here, I mean, the defense, crit damage, accuracy, I'll tell you what, this is a Trickery rune, guys. Honestly, you change this HP into a crit rate, and this is an amazing Rage rune right here. So we're going to go ahead and keep this rune. I think you'll definitely find some uses for it. It could also be amazing for like a Bulldozer or a Copper. But it's definitely much better than it was. I know we've actually taken away speed on this. You can actually gem in as much as 10 speed with a legend, so we basically gave up 11 speed, and the HP you could gem right back over and it would still be a great fit. So we've really not lost all that much speed, and we've way upgraded the rest of the rune overall. And so guys, that's actually going to be it. I know there were 99 reapps left, but I've made a big deal about this throughout the whole video. You really want to, you don't need to rush to use your reapps. If you run out of targets, and in this case we did, there were no more targets, at least none that were fully powered up yet, that I felt were going to benefit Special Scrub, that were going to be like a responsible use of reapps, right? At this point, I think we'd be best served by just saving his reapps and maybe coming back to it in a month or two when he's had a chance to farm some additional runes. And so that's going to be it for today's video. As always, guys, I really hope you enjoyed the video. I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next time. Hey guys, if you're still with me to this point, then that means that you probably liked the video, found it entertaining, or even better, both. So please smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment down below, because those things help the channel grow, and more importantly, they show me that the video is useful, and that's the whole reason I do this in the first place.